say to yourself, I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and to those who follow me. I deeply desire the help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal to or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires.
I do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. I do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family of explorers of consciousness. I'm not sure.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
All broadcasting live here on Lighting the Void tonight, August 13th, live here on YouTube. And we're not live on the station, but I'll get to that in just a second. So hopefully those people will come over here. But it is August the 13th, 2024. And we're starting another week of Lighting the Void here. Thank you guys for joining us wherever you're joining us from. Whether you've listened to the show on TuneIn, YouTube, the podcast, wherever you've listened to it from, thanks for listening. So, for the past two broadcasts, we've been getting involved with the Explorers Project and the Gateway Program, and kind of trying to learn about what it really means to explore the out-of-body state. What some of the world's best out-of-body explorers, like, what have they learned? And when I say world's best, it's because, just in my opinion, I believe that's what they are. But what are some of the things that they've learned, some of the things that they know about conscious exploration once they leave the body? And we're going to continue to go down this road because I think it's educational and it's interesting to me. Super interesting to me, but I want to say a couple of things just to get it out of the way. So something kind of happened that I was afraid that was going to happen. And it kind of sucks, but it's not like a terrible problem, but it's kind of a good problem. I just got to figure some stuff out. So naturally the listenership on the radio station increased, but the charges for our license increased, and we were able to maintain it for a couple of months. But me and Jess and Gigi and a couple other people, we only have like $40 to pitch into this radio station. So if that doesn't cover it, usually donations and other things will cover it. I know Michael donated a little bit tonight. So if the radio station is something that matters to you, like the Fringe FM, we need your support. Like, it doesn't matter if what it is. It can be $1, $5, whatever. And if you go to the support page there and that form doesn't come up, there should be a form, not just like Cash App and whatever. If it doesn't come up, just refresh the page. Also, Domek and his family still need your support, your prayers, your positive vibes. They're going through some pretty tough times right now. And, man, I have just been thinking a lot about the transition phase of life. You know, we've also got another listener that reached out to us not too long ago who has ALS and is, you know, kind of reaching towards the last stages of his life. He still listens to the show, as he said, as much as he can. And, you know, and it made me think, I think a lot about this. I also realized too that, a lot of stuff that we are driven by are the things that make us the most insecure or fearful sometimes. And I don't mean this in a bad way. But the unknown is something that scares everybody. It does. It's sometimes we don't want to think about it. Sometimes we don't want to address it until we have to, right? So anytime changes come up in our life, or we come to this moment where we get sick, or our family members get sick, or somebody passes, those are the times that we think about these things. And so in part, what I'm trying to say is one of the biggest reasons why I started Lighting the Void was driven by an insecurity of mine about these things, but also a curiosity, like a passion and a curiosity to find out the truth. But just like we don't really know what happens after we pass away. And all we can do to explore consciousness here and see reality is some people do psychedelics, some people meditate. These members of the Explorers Project did out-of-body experiences and things like that. Because it really would be cool to know. If I was to give you my intuitive opinion about all of this stuff without any kind of scientific fact, I believe that there's two big things going on here. Like, one of them has to do with love, right? Like, for sure. And then the other thing is this kind of what Thomas Campbell talks about, like this consciousness kind of feedback loop that's happening. So, but I started asking myself an even bigger question today. If consciousness needs a living feedback loop while we're alive, like if it needs, for instance, if energy made life and life is here to feed back information towards source, right? So we're here to feed back information towards source, then why? So what happens when we pass away? Now, I've listened to the book Journey of Souls, which I think is a really cool book. If you ever want to listen to this book on audio, especially the first book, Journey of Souls, where Michael Newton hypnotizes several of his patients, and he talks to them while they're in between lives. So they pass away and they go in between lives and things of that nature. And from what that book states, it's almost like, it's kind of weird because magic teaches one thing, and then anyways, I'll get to that in a second, but it's almost like, so we come to this place, we do all this stuff in our life, and we have all these experiences, the pain, the drama, the joy, the pleasure, the confusion, the just everything that, you know, a human being can experience, love, abandonment, you know, fulfillment. And then when we pass away, according to that book, there's like people or guides there or something that ask questions. It's not like they're guiding us or telling us things. It's almost like it's a curiosity. They're asking, well, why did you do this? Why did you do those things? And it was always, the more I paid attention to this book, it was always the small things that Michael Newton and his patients would ask about. For instance, I talked about this before, but they had patients that were world champions in boxing, or they lived extravagant lives, and yet the guides that would ask them questions after they passed away was like, well, when you gave money or helped this person, why did you do that? And always, all of their questions kind of went around this love thing, right? And it's very, very interesting to me, man. So I think, let me just run this down like as intuitive as I can. So while we're alive, I think that we're doing this play back and forth, creator to human, whatever, and we're giving the information back to it, and then it helps us create, and we give information, and it helps us create, but it's trying to talk to us the whole time. This is why synchronicity works, divination works, magic works, religion, all of these different things work it helps us to connect to this thing. So imagine you're trying to speak a language to your creator that, you don't know its language. And then slowly over time, you start learning its language has to do with your experience, everything you experience, and symbols, right? Symbols in your experience and love. And then it gets all this feedback. So it knows, it's almost like consciousness knows what's going on. It's right there with you the whole time you're alive. But when you pass away, I think, and I'm just saying intuitively, you get to this place where it's like you have a meeting. Now, this meeting that happens with some people is in the form, at least it was interpreted through hypnosis, like in the forms of like guides that are asking or panels of people that are just asking questions, trying to figure stuff out. But even beyond that, like, we don't know. I just highly recommend that you guys listen to Journey of Souls. Any point in time you get a chance to. I'm not saying buy all of it, but it is very fascinating in the fact that he had so many patients reveal some of the same things through their own filters, right? So when we get to this place where we're going to pass away, a lot of things, or when we start thinking about this stuff, right? Like when we get sick or when our lives are going to end or things like that, or when we're around someone that's doing that, we start thinking about whole different things. We don't think about the bills. We don't think about, we don't think about all this material stuff or what's on Facebook. We really start asking like the deeper questions, and this is the whole reason, one of the biggest reasons, other than my own isolation and my feeling isolated, my inability to connect, right? Not inability, but just did not feel connected, was one of the whole reasons why I created the show. So as I go on a ramble here, before I get too far off, the reason why I'm fascinated with the out-of-body experience and what's going on here is, it seems to me like while these people are alive, we can experience all kinds of things, but so far all we know is that color and symbol are big deals to whatever we're communicating with or whatever we're trying to communicate with. And until we get to a state of consciousness, until all of us get to a state of consciousness where when we reincarnate, we know exactly who we are, right? Which I think is what we're trying to evolve to spiritually eventually. I don't know how long it's going to take to get there, but I think that's what we're trying to get to. Like, I don't know that physical life everlasting is really a thing, but I do have an intuitive feeling that creation is trying to get us to this place where our being is consciously aware enough individually that even when we incarnate, we don't forget anymore. And that would be, I guess, what you could call an advanced society or an advanced level society. So think about just those parameters alone. And it's not only growing us consciously, but it's growing us physically. And in those parameters, all kinds of chaos and mystery and unknown things are going to happen to us in reality until we get to that state. And when we get to that state, we will be able to do amazing things, right? Until then, it's going to seem a bit chaotic, almost like hell on earth sometimes not. All of what I just said is entirely intuitive based on like all of the studies that I've done and the stuff I've experienced. But so that's all I wanted to cover before we get back into this. Yeah, like the Fringe FM really needs your support now more than ever, because if we don't, this thing is going to transform into something else. If it doesn't, it's inevitable, right? Just like anything, change is inevitable. But just had to get that out there. But what Michael's going through with his father and his family made me think a lot about me and my dad, why I'm back out here in the shack dealing with all these like old things that just keep coming up, you know. It's pretty dark here, actually. We don't have a light outside anywhere. And all I've been doing is just marinating about this stuff, just thinking about it. Then I go try to conversate with him, and I realize I don't have this connection with my father that I've always really wanted, but he is my father. And even when I was going out of body, like when I was trying to get out of body and I traveled to his bedside to talk to him, he was still, you know, that guy that I could connect with on some levels, but not the level that I'm talking to you about, right? So this got me into listening to Journeys Out of the Body and taking this whole out-of-body experience thing seriously. And the one that I wanted to get into tonight was life as a waveform. I think Robert Monroe talks a lot about this. He was really big on believing that we're actually made up of energetic waves. You could call it consciousness or whatever, but this was something that he claimed that he could feel in his body. Even before he would get out of body, he would feel waves of energy going up and down in his body. And the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the guy that channeled that book talks about waves of energy going through the body. I have really been trying to get back into doing the out-of-body stuff again, and I'm starting to feel those waves of energy like going back through the body, in and out of the body again. So we have to keep going down this whole rabbit hole. And I'm not going to stop. But I would like to listen to this and maybe commentate on it, and you tell me what you think. You could also call into it 501-777-5631 anytime we do these shows. I don't care what I'm talking about, who's talking. Always feel free to interrupt, because I do want to know what you guys think as well, too. And so, yeah, I think that's all I got to say. We're starting a new week here again, and we're going to get into this. Is called, I believe, Life as a Waveform. I'm just waiting for it to start up. I don't know why it's not starting up. It did this last time where it was really slow. Maybe a lot of people have been going here. So a lot of people have been listening to Journeys Out of the Body. There's another thing, too, that I wanted to talk about. Hopefully, if this starts, then I'll talk about it later. But so some of the tarot readings that I did when we were raising money to get the air conditioner, a lot of things are coming up about purpose, right? And what I'm finding in a lot of readings when I talk to people is that there's an inability to understand like what our purpose is or why we're here, or trying to find answers for things. It's almost like this crazy like yearning. And so I want to recommend everybody to listen to Journeys Out of the Body whenever you get a chance, because there are sections in that book. I know you think it's all about out-of-body experiences, but it's really not. It's really not. It's more about, I mean, it is, but he answers all of these questions when he's going out of body. He learned answers to all of our questions that we have on this show traveling out of body. And I believe I shared that A, B, and C column thing that he learned through conscious teaching in the Telegram. But Yeah, if he brings it up here, I'll talk about it, but I think it's starting, or it's already started. Here we go.
He was not in an isolation chamber, nor was he in the usual lying down mode. Instead, he was usually sitting in a near lotus position on the floor, or standing or slouched in a chair. The location, the main meeting room in the Institute Center in Virginia, at bedtime story sessions during the Gateway Voyage program. The explorer? Well, I hope he is familiar to you by this time.
It's been over 10 years since you wrote the book. What have you been doing since then?
Well, in looking back, I kind of wonder myself what I've been doing the last 10 years or so. Sometimes I think it's nothing.
Yeah, this is Robert Monroe talking himself.
What has been happening? Well, first of all, the publication of the book attracted a lot of attention and gave me the opportunity to meet a lot of new people, which was very rewarding in itself. I think the other part is that I came out of the closet. Instead of being a closet, out-of-body, hidden-away person, I became known generally that this thing has been taking place in my life, or had been. And it was funny that I began to be looked upon as sort of people would stare and look at me and say, "Is that who he is? That's that person that goes out of their body and these strange looks like he's a weirdo or a freak or something." But it was a lot of fun and to see this change. And of course, one of the most rewarding things that has taken place in the last 10 years is the mail of people from, say, all over the world, different types of mail. And the most important ones were the ones that said, "Thank God I know I'm sane," instead of being some particular type of person who has a mental aberration that they were hiding in the closet, I might add. So that was, that's sort of a general approach, and of course, the other part is that in these last 10 years, there's been a very amazing change in the way people think. And of course, I like to think that this book had something to do with it. And as I said, coming out of the closet by necessity, having written the book, the immense changes over these last 10 or 11 years in public attitude. And one of the things that has taken place, of course, is that now it's okay to talk about out-of-body experiences as a reality. And from that point of view, we participated in the presentation last year of 3 papers before the American Psychiatric Association on the out-of-body experiences, which 10 years ago would be an unheard of thing. It's beyond my wildest imagination that the APA would seriously listen to a phenomenon known as the out-of-body experience. And there's been a lot of other things. I've given how many lectures in the last 10 years? 100, 200, 500? I haven't counted them. But one of them I gave at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington. And that's beyond my wildest dreams 10 years ago, that of such a conservative place that one would give a talk on the out-of-body experiences. And during the talk, I noticed that he was given in this auditorium off one of the main halls, and outside in one of these display halls was a wire, an invisible sort of wire coming down from the ceiling, and there was nothing on the end of the wire. So in that particular talk, I referred to this wire with nothing on the end of it, and I said, there is the Smithsonian display of someone in their out-of-body state. You can't see it, but there it is. But this is kind of the fun things that have happened. And one of the other things that has developed through the years is that, and these things I speak of are references to it, that more and more I think the acceptance of the fact that the out-of-body state is a natural state. It's not a weird type thing. It's something that we, of course, believe now takes place during everyone's sleep at night. And perhaps in the next...
So remember that Thomas Campbell said that consciousness is doing this stuff too. So in order for us to get to this level of consciousness that we need to as a society, the entity that he talked to told him in the last broadcast that we did, the entity that talked to him told him that we need to do this more. I know it's frustrating. I was just on Juan's podcast and I was talking to him about this too, like that. He said, well, I tried to do the out-of-body thing. And then someone asked in YouTube the other day, well, how many people can do this? Everybody can do it. Like, this is something I feel like that God gave us that we should be using, God, creator, whatever you want to call it. We should be using to advance our consciousness, right? Like, we should be trying to do this as much as possible. Anyways, I'm not trying to interrupt what he's saying here, but he believed in this as much as Thomas did, as much as I do, as much as a lot of other people do. And the more people that we can get to do this, not only will we find out like truths, but we'll advance as a society. Like, I'm going to get on a rant here, but we won't even have to worry about what is AI going to do and all that stuff, because we'll be running AI. It won't be the other way around.
10 years to come, this will be scientifically proven. And one way or another, perhaps we may have a part of that. And if so, what happens during sleep that causes one to leave their body? And that, of course, is something will be a product of the information of that may be come out in subsequent research. But that's well, what's happened since then? Well, I think perhaps the most important thing also in the last 10 years that we formally set together this institute that had been sort of a planned thing for some 10 years prior to then. I think it was probably formed, or officially formed out of necessity, simply because of the input of interested parties as a result of the book. But originally what was the origin of the institute was the R&D division of a company that I had some, oh goodness, 20 years ago, I guess it was. So and in those 20 years, then the 10 years prior to the publication of the book, this was my own company, and so it had to do with audio systems, so it was quite proper that that company researched audio techniques. And among those things, in looking for those audio techniques, it's often been a question as to which came first, the chicken or the egg, the audio research as to out-of-body or the previous audio research creating the out-of-body state in me. But that's another matter. Anyway, that's what did happen in these last 10 years, was the organization, the formalization of the Institute as an offshoot or a follow-up to this original research that had been done by the company that I had. And as a result, within these last 10 years, we have developed certain interesting things that have borne fruit. The first of those was we did develop a technique of audio pulsing called, we call it a method of evoking a frequency following response in the brain through audio pulses. And we did obtain a basic patent on that particular method back in 1975, and that's some years ago already. And beyond that, we did develop a pattern from that formula or that method. We did develop this what we call hemispheric synchronization, which
so that's another thing a lot of people don't talk about. One, when you hear people discussing in the conspiracy realm that it was the government or the CIA that funded the Monroe Institute, that's false. Howard Hughes, this thing, man, he did it with his own money. Like his own money. That was his money. He created the Institute. Two, in the hemisync audios themselves, there's more than just the two frequencies of tones playing in those things. You'll hear like a pulsing and all kinds of stuff. So he uses 2 or 3 different things to try to keep your mind awake while the body falls asleep.
We are still not sure is a natural state, but it is a different state of consciousness. And we have been exploring that ever since. Is this beginning to help answer your question a little bit? I know I'm getting off the track.
No, you're filling in lots of
All right. One of the other things that did take place was that I guess this must have been 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 or 5. Always lose a year, so I'll add another year. We were invited out to a place called Esalen in California, and you may have heard of it. Esalen is in the past anyway, has been sort of the hotbed or origin point for many different types of psychological and psychiatric and philosophies as to the mind and how the mind works, and many things like that have originated with some type of Esalen presentation or Esalen program. And Esalen is out at Big Sur, and it's right on the edge of a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Anyway, they had heard of our researchers, the people who operate Esalen, and invited us to do a weekend program at Esalen at Big Sur, and which gathering together the methods that we had developed and put them into a workshop program, which we did. And this friend of mine, who is no longer here not at the Institute, he's no longer around in time and space, but he joined in. We two really initiates in the methods of putting together workshops stumbled out to Big Sur, California with a suitcase full of tapes, and we were not using headphones at that particular time. Anyway, we had a method where we were on a round-the-clock tape program where people slept for an hour and a half, and then we'd have a tape and sleep for another hour and a half. But we never did realize until we got there and did it that somebody had to run the show for that hour and a half for that 36 or 48 hours. And here, at the end of it, he was exhausted and I was exhausted. So we never really did know the results with the participants. We were just too tired to find out. We both disappeared into hotels in San Francisco and collapsed for 2 days because it was just really a rough one. Anyway,
that would almost be called a right brain accident.
It was a lesson in something. But in any event, this one man who had been in the program knew where I was sleeping, and he's a physicist out at one of the big think tanks in California.
Might be Thomas
And
Campbell.
he called me Tuesday afternoon and woke me up. He says, "I'm sorry to wake you up." And I said, "Well, you did." And so he said, "I have tried this one technique 58 times," being that research physicist type that he is. And he says, "It has worked 52 times, and I can't verify the other 4. And he says, "What do I do next?" I said, "I don't know," because we had just started this thing. The other facet of it was that we were due to do a similar program. We'd already, because Esalen in San Francisco had heard about this particular thing taking place out of Big Sur, and they said, "Well, me too." So we had stupidly agreed to do the next weekend another one immediately following in San Francisco, and we both groaned mightily because what was going to happen that next weekend. And we had learned one thing, but we didn't know how to solve it, was that particular thing we were doing at the time, made these participants ravenous with hunger. And it's still a mystery because it was only peculiar to that particular program. And so at Big Sur, we had the kitchen was right next door, and we had the principle of ongoing food. Whenever they needed, they'd go in the kitchen, here's piles of food, then they would eat. We even didn't have any formal meals. We just did it that way. Whenever they're hungry, there's food. So the place where it was in San Francisco, I immediately sensed trouble because it was up on the 4th floor of a walk-up on Union Street in San Francisco, in an office building. It was the top floor. And the problem seemed to be developing because the food was going to be catered in there instead of being available. Well, anyway, the first day worked all right, but on Sunday morning, all these people at 5 o'clock were wide awake and ravenous. "Where's the food? Where's the food?" And went down on Union Street on a Sunday morning at 5 o'clock. There's no place open for food or anything. These are all sort of fancy restaurants, and you can't get anything open. And we're waiting for the caterer to come in, and there were these outside steps that went up to the top of the building. And this is about 30 people waiting to be fed, and it is now about 6 o'clock, and the man was supposed to be there at 6, and so it wasn't his fault. But when he opened the door and these people came in with these trays, they just descended on him like a bunch of locusts and grabbed the food and wolfed it. And he looked, the funniest look on this man's face, to see these people grabbing buns, chomp, 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 and eating buns. Continued to do them out in California. And then some people in Kansas heard about it, and we had to go do one in Kansas. And it was beginning to get something, so we finally said, well, what do we call this
How
thing?
did this...
So we called it very grandiosely the M5000 program, saying that this is a good way to conduct ongoing research, because...
How did this, the power of the internet, imagine like how psyched these people were back then in the 70s. Like these people are like having out-of-body experiences and stuff, right? And then all of a sudden, if this was to happen today, if like we did some breakthrough stuff today, it would take off tremendously, right? You would think. I just don't understand. I'm kind of flabbergasted as to like, why are there not more than just people talking on the internet about this? Like, why is there not more government backing behind it? I mean, I got a theory behind that, but like there should be way more research and way more money behind all this. As a matter of fact, I put up the Monroe Institute.org too. Like if you are listening to this YouTube and you want to check it out or you want to support what they're doing.
One of the things is that something must have happened 5 years ago, but some 5 years ago I did make a decision. I made the decision that this consciousness, this time-space consciousness that I'm using right now, did not have enough knowledge, enough experience to really handle the out-of-body state as I understood it. In other words, what to do with it. Because by 5 years ago, when I had gotten extremely tired of the experimental mode of making runs from Virginia to California, for example, and how many times can you do this before it gets extremely boring, or more importantly, you're using a medium in an environment that it doesn't feel like belonging in, and as it were, in the out-of-body state, time-space is kind of a gray area, and up here above you somehow is a very, very beautiful glowing lights that attract you immeasurably. And once you go to those glowing lights, it's very, very difficult to stay down and perform mundane experimentation in this gray, murky area.
Such as going from Virginia to San Francisco.
Such as going from Virginia to San Francisco. And it sounds very mundane, or what's the word, to say that it is boring, but it does get boring because you're looking up and there's the fun up there, and you're having to go plowing through this. And
what's he talking about? Is he talking about like the fun? I don't get what he's saying, because it don't sound mundane to me at all.
And I found going to the bright lights stretched this consciousness so far to be able to perceive and understand it, or even know what to do when I got there. That I made this decision. And the decision was fundamentally this, that instead of my having this time-space consciousness direct what my out-of-body state will be and what I will do with it, I will let my total self make this decision. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I made this decision, and now when I go into the out-of-body state, fundamentally, and it's been going on for these 5 years, and an amazing change took place as a result. I simply roll pleasantly out of the body and I say, all right, let's go. What is the menu for today? Or what's the itinerary? And with that, this time-space consciousness sort of goes along for the ride, or as an objective observer, and not by far the decision maker, as it were. And this total self, with a sort of a paternal pat on the head, says, well, tonight's the night we do this. And so we go to one of these amazing, from this consciousness point of view, far off or seemingly far off states of being, reality systems, and perform functions that totally bewilder this particular consciousness. And this particular consciousness desperately tries to understand these actions and these reasons for performing these things, and which are virtually impossible to bring back to this reality, except for the tremendous acceleration of them, the tremendous sense of awe about some of the things being performed.
I know that's a little confusing when he's talking about his total self, but if you get all 3 books, and I still recommend getting the audio books. So the first book, when he's traveling around the earth out of body, like when he's here in this realm, and I think a little bit in other realms too, he's in control like you and I are in control, except he's more like flying around and doing stuff where we can't really do that in physical bodies. But his consciousness is like the consciousness that if you're in a physical body. When he talks about his total self, it's not until I think like either in the end of the first book or in his second book where he surrenders to, it's almost like a surrendering to the total self, instead of him trying to direct what he's going to do, where he's going to go, who he's going to go see or whatever, which he could still go back and do at any point in time. It's almost like he surrenders to this awareness of knowing something's guiding him, right? And then he just totally surrenders to it. And that's when the other like really crazy things start happening in book 2 and book 3.
And I suppose you'd like to know my interpretation of one of these things that being performed. As near as I can gather, it is a group, or is it one of a whole? In other words, is this total I, is it a finger on a hand on a body that is performing this awesome function? And as near as I can understand, that awesome function it is comparable to setting up a whole solar system or a galaxy of that type of creative process. That and observing and participating in the manipulation of energies to do this. And so coming home into this gray space is very mundane after getting into that type of thing. And as I say, from my perspective, I still don't know whether I'm a finger of a hand, of a body, of a total self that's doing this, or there are a group of us, because it's quite apparent there's another finger next to me that I'm coordinating with that has an energy system not quite like mine that is also needed to perform this function, just as your thumb performs a different function than your forefinger, but they are somehow connected. And when you come back from one of those, it is that's one of the types of things that is so difficult to describe. And I've gotten lazy. I no longer go through a system to get into the out-of-body state. It is a nightly thing. But usually on a nightly thing, I go through 2 sleep cycles, wake up, and this is about 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that, thereabouts, depending on when I go to sleep. And I wake up, and my body's totally relaxed. I'm rested. My mind is very alert. And to get out of the body at that stage is absurdly easy for me. It's a little neat sort of a detachment. You sort of sink down a little bit, come up, and make a roll over, and you're out. And it's then at that stage, rolling out, I'm just, there I am. And if after performing that function, I would just sort of roll or float in the air and just sort of float really, a very gentle oscillation, and nothing would happen until this consciousness says, okay, where do we go now? And a minute, and then this total self says, well, I thought you'd never ask. And that's when it begins.
So all right. So I know I keep interrupting, but this is what I mean when I say, like, intuitively, there's this thing that's not playing with us, but communicating with us all the time. We call it God. We call it the supreme being or whatever. But he's literally talking about when he gets out of body, he can go anywhere he wants, but it's like this gray area. He can go anywhere in the world. But if he really wants to go explore conscious stuff, like bigger energies, higher dimensions, things like that, he has to totally surrender himself to this total self or this higher self, which he is admitting like he doesn't know. He knows it's a part of that he's a part of a whole, whether he's a finger on a hand of a bigger being or that he's a part of a group, right? But he knows that when he surrenders to the whole or the body or whatever you want to call it, he begins to go on journeys like you. I don't want to give away too much. If you haven't listened to the books, you really need to, all three of them, from start to finish. I've been like pounding this for years because I believe in it so much. But yeah, he's saying this, what I just said, but in a different way, but also in the astral realm too. So but think about how that could help us in our life practically. Like if we go out in the astral realm and we experience the surrender to this conscious thing and it starts taking us all these places and showing us all these things, why not do the same thing here? I'm not saying lay on your ass and let the universe do everything. That's not what I mean, but really be able to surrender to what we call spirit even more, to really be able to let go.
And a re-entry from that is, or coming back is, I hope, and most of the time I have protective systems that don't call me back, like a telephone ringing or a cat jumping on the bed or something like that. But generally speaking, coming back is a very gentle thing, having performed that particular task or function during that particular segment, which is it can be the equivalent of 1,000 years in activity, although it may only be 20 minutes in this time. So because it has no measurement in terms of time, and it seems like an eternity has taken place in activity. When I come back, I realize that the most it could have been is a half an hour. And re-entry into that is sort of a type thing. Where? What? And I look at my usual clock time and say, only 20 minutes? And we built a few planets and a few moons and created a sun or two, all in that 20 minutes. And that's where it is.
Question. Bob, do you always take your physical form in that sense, or do you use other forms to travel?
The best description I can give you on that is that in terms of moving into that type of energy system operation, I no longer have a physical form. I've become quite aware of it as a form. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you're a ball shaped, as near as I can figure, and if you need an arm, you grow an arm, as it were, very quickly, or you create an arm. If you can think of this, of an energy matrix, your physical body is a matrix, like a Jell-O mold, all right? And the Jell-O is in the mold, and take the mold, and the Jell-O gets out of the mold, and it still has the shape, as this energy has the shape of a human body. But after that, after it's been out a while and, say, warmed, it sort of melts, and it loses the form of the Jell-O, loses the form. And this energy, the farther you get away from your physical body, the more I perceive that it losing the, and farther is not the term at all, the more forgetful you'll be that you have a physical body, is a better way of putting it, the less that you resume or continue to have that humanoid form. You don't think of seeing with eyes and this kind of thing, but it is very much and I guess that is the proper term. The more you forget about having a physical body, the less you have the human form.
If you think about it, then, can you take the form of the ball, or say a dolphin, or...
Oh, yes.
A dolphin?
All it takes is thinking about it.
All about that, the thinking about it...
makes it so?
Makes it so, pretty much. I have always wanted to try a dolphin, but I don't know, I haven't been lured into that yet. Although I have been playing around in the ocean stuff, but I never thought to take a dolphin form and see whether a big female dolphin came up and said, "Hey, big boy," or something like this. Well, it's that kind of thing that has been the last 10 years. obviously the main thing in my life has been the formation of the Institute during that 10 years. And having completed more or less of a cycle in that form, and the Institute in itself is becoming far more diverse than simply the very typical, or not typical, good night, no, single-pointed organization conducting research. It is diverting into many, many different patterns, and that's what I see the next 10 years are about as regards the Institute. And what I do in the next 10 years, well, that is a good open question.
All right,
Time to interrupt and turn your cassette over to continue on the other side.
So when Robert Monroe is obviously still alive, this is what we're listening to. It's really cool to listen to him talk about, in the beginning, like how the Monroe Institute got started, what happens when he goes out of body, the types of things that we're capable of. You can really hear his passion in it, but eventually in this talk, I know that he gets into what's called, where he talks about how consciousness, how we're just waveforms, or life is a waveform, or something like that. And I know he's going to get into that eventually. I've only heard this interview once. This is like the second time I've heard this one, actually. So, just taking you along here with us on the show of, the studies of the Monroe Institute. Still, I highly recommend the audiobooks. I can leave a link to them once I do the show notes and stuff. But we're going to, even though we're not hooked into the station, like, we still have some other stuff we got to promote here too. So we're going to, as promised, we're going to take the commercial break. However, we don't have to listen to the regular radio commercial breaks, just the show stuff and a few station shout outs. But anyways, we'll be right back. Please support the station. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. All that good stuff.
Program is very, very sick.
Hello, my name's Tim Doyle, lead member of investigations for UFO seekers. I've spent the last 5 years in the field investigating UFO sightings and the topic of aliens. But after getting back to headquarters, when I'm finished reviewing footage, and after videos are uploaded, when I open my iPhone to start streaming radio, I choose The Fringe FM. And you should too.
This is Barbara Charlton from Metaphorical Archaeology. If you've ever had a traumatic paranormal experience, the effects of it may stay with you for years. Who do you talk to? You can't go to conventional help. What we do is we use emotional freedom techniques or tapping to actually neutralize the effects of that event. Maybe when you tell the story now, your heart races and your palms get sweaty. You don't even want to think about it because you don't know how to neutralize that. That's what EFT tapping does. It neutralizes those emotions. The circuit that was recorded on is gone. The energy flows freely and you're free of it. And that's what emotional freedom is all about. We offer this as a pro bono service, but this is something that I offer because no one, it seems, is helping people with these experiences. If you'd like to reach me, it's really easy. My cell phone is 214-995-3754. Please leave a message. I will get back to you as quickly as possible. Or you can email me, barb.eft@gmail.com. And EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. Reach out to me. It's confidential. This works. You won't believe the results.
Have you ever wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or, will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. right here on Fringe FM.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station.
Hey, I'm J.M. DeBoard, and when I want to talk about dreams, I look up my man Joe Root and his show, Lighting the Void.
This is Elle. I listen to Lighting the Void because it's interactive radio with good content, interesting guests, and a humble host, sharing his journey through the esoteric. Hey, Joe Roop. Thanks for having us along for the ride.
Thank you so much for a delightful evening.
Well, I got a lot of ground to cover.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void Radio. So, this is our third video that I guess we haven't done in a long time, but third video of the Explorer series, and the interviewer is talking to Robert Monroe himself about the, I guess, the beginnings of the Monroe Institute and what happens, right? Like, what happens when he goes out of body and all of these things. And eventually in this discussion, he's going to get into energy, like as a waveform, which I think is fascinating. And like I said before, this is because even in his audio tapes, when you listen to them, he talks about energy as a waveform, and that you can control and direct these energies that are in your body. You just have to learn to develop that skill. I don't know how, I guess I could say how solid this is, but for me, when I do the out of body stuff, I can feel those vibrations or waveforms too. Some people have discussed them as like warm feelings where the body feels really hot, really warm. Some people have talked about loud noises. I think it just happens different for everybody, but like, this is really fascinating. So we're listening to the voice of Robert Monroe. I want to say that they did this interview, I think in the 80s. And, yeah, so he should be getting into it. Again, you can call in at 501-777-5631. And like I said before, I have to shout it out, like the station, the Fringe FM, the radio side of it really needs your support. So if you can support, please do so at fringe.fm. All right, here we go. We're flipping the tape, I think.
Results have come of your research effort in recent years?
Well, I hate to start with a negative, but if there's one thing that we've discovered, and that is that it is impossible with our present instrumentation to directly measure this life force, this life vitality, this life energy that we're aware of. If there is a way to do it, it has not surfaced to our knowledge and information, either in our work or in related work. EEG studies, for example, do show certain states of the individual's pattern of being, but they don't show that life energy in and of itself, because they are an electrical function. These all EEG, electroencephalograph studies are measuring electricity. And one of the things we do know is that this particular life energy is not electricity, nor is it magnetism. We theorize that it may be the third member of a triad, and that is that And we've noticed that in man's various parts of his culture through the many years, the triad of forces has surfaced many times. And we kind of suspect, without much more than one or two shreds of proof, that this life energy is the third in a triad of energy, that electricity is here, that magnetism is another corner of the triangle, and that this Y force, X force, Psi force, vital life energy that we call life energy is the third point. And they do have an interrelationship, but they are not one, or they are not specifically one or the other. And just as magnetism is not electricity, but it relates to it. And so therefore we combine the two of those and we have a thing called electromagnetic energy. Somehow this life energy, with which I use this now to think and to even make my tongue work, is an interconnect between these two, and is a bridging, just as electromagnetic radiation is one form. We suspect that this psi force, as it were, mixed with magnetism, maybe psi-magnetics or something like this, and mixed with all three produces something that we call this life energy. It's very, very tricky. It's as if you're measuring the smoke from a fire without actually measuring the fire itself. And that's the best that we can do with our instrumentation. This is one of the things that after these last 10 years, in recent years, we're quite sure of.
So he knows the energy is there, he just doesn't know what to call it, right? And our bodies are designed like batteries. So we have these two poles, one directing one side and one part of the brain directing another, and this energetic flow going on. So we do have kind of like the poles of magnetism, so to speak, and electricity, which kind of works in the same, but going through the body. But he's talking about a third, like, energy that he's recognizing, that he feels when he goes through this out-of-body state, that supposedly, like, I guess what he's saying, if I'm understanding this correctly, brings both of them, or uses both of them together, I guess.
The second thing that we have begun to perceive is, in our own direct research, is that we have one means of measuring the smoke that seems to describe or be affected by the stages of consciousness that we work in. And that is measuring body voltage. And what we do with this is that we are not measuring muscle tone or galvanic skin response. We're actually measuring body voltage by taking a head-to-foot measurement of the whole body and then running that into a very sensitive frequency counter that measures down at the microvolt level. And as near as we can figure, that voltage ranges about 1.7 something volts on the average individual, depending upon their weight and size and some other unknown factors. And down at that 1.733, that last three is where we find the sensitivity to changes in consciousness. And we can see waveforms there that are in themselves very, very interesting and very, very exciting. So as a result, this is the kind of thing that deserves much further investigation, and we certainly are working on it. We also have gotten, as you know, well into the concept of left brain and right brain, and we think that is certainly a simplification of what is really happening in the mind-brain relationship. We agree and seem to have some justification in going along in the concept that mind is to brain as a ordering or command system is to a computer. We are quite definite in our approach that the mind is not the product of the brain, but the brain's more the product of the mind, as it were.
It fixes green screen.
We think there are some ways that we can get that into certainly a cause and effect mode. We've also gotten to where we suspect everything is in that waveform, and as you know, quantum mechanics speaks of nothing but waveform, and holographic theory is a series of coherent waveforms. And we think that our life existence here is just a series of overlaid waveforms. The basic one, for example, the waveform is one of physical life here in and of itself. And that is basically one where you're born here and you have a long wave, and then you do what we call die, and that's one film. And when you are dead, as it were, that waveform continues, but not in this particular reality system, but it is a waveform, and you surface again and become here again and inhabit, say, a physical body, and that's in the upper part of the wave. And you go down below the line again, and you inhabit and exist in some other reality structure.
Is that then what reincarnation?
Well,
whoa, dude! Before we get into the reincarnation thing, that is a trippy thought, because I thought he meant like each individual one of us is just like a single waveform, but he's saying that we're riding this waveform almost as we go through different reality systems. I think. I mean, did I get that right?
Yes. Let me get on to that in a second. I'll see how that might fit in reincarnation, or what we think of as reincarnation. If you take that long wave and then we add finer waves to it, and one of the most obvious ones, that big wave being birth, growth, maturity, aging, and death. And then we have another little simple waveform that we perform every day. We are awake and we're asleep. And this is a local, a little short visit to that other system. You're above the line in that waveform. You're conscious here. Go below, and you're conscious in that other reality structure. This is it means, in essence, that you can't wait till you die. You got to go there during the night and get there a little bit beforehand, as it were. In other words, a balancing system, so that.
Are we in training then?
In training, I think it's something even beyond that. I think it's a necessity, just as an equalizing, balancing process, and to be in that other reality a little bit, just to balance being in this reality. If you think of a waveform, and it's up and then it's down, it's in the mountain, the valley, or whatever way you want to put it, and so you have to have all nature. It has waveforms, and they are not in stasis. They're not all above the line, and they have to be above the line and below the line to be a waveform or a vibration, as it were. And we arbitrarily set the line where we want it, but basically that's what it is. And so you have that, and we are much inclined to go along with this because there's some supportive evidence of it. That even during this particular consciousness which we're using right now, that there is and this is certainly not original with us, but there is I say we like it, the idea of it, and we are beginning to get pieces of it. That not only is that, here's another and much finer waveform, that as we sit here, we are flickering now in and out of that consciousness. And we are flickering in a real short, much shorter wave. What is it, a thousandth of a second, a millionth of a second? Who can tell? But so that we are right now in that other reality, but we're this part of us not being able to perceive the gaps when we're in the other. It only sees the tops of the waves here. And whereas in that other system, they're saying, "Oh, hello, Isabel. What are you doing? Are you?" And as far as Isabel's concerned,
bro, hold on a second.
You are living in that.
Like Robert Monroe's blowing my mind. Just I don't know. Well, like I can usually conceive a lot of different things pretty easily, but thinking about what he said about the holographic, their theory on holographic theories of reality, how everything's just waveforms on top of waveforms, right? And consciousness is riding these waveforms. Think about that. So we're literally like it's almost like we're changing the radio stations as we go through reality, even in this existence. And now he's saying that the bottom and the tops of the waveforms, like when we ride this waveform, we can't perceive the other one. But this is tripping me out. I'm going to have to go back and listen to this again later. So you could totally tell this dude's been doing his out-of-body work, right? You got to read the CIA document too, like Cosmic's saying. Like you have to read the document where the guy filled out the entire report to his CO And it's at CIA.gov about his whole interpretation of what Robert Monroe was doing.
That other reality just as much as you are here, because the flickering is going on all the time. And the fact that you can't perceive the gaps when you're there is nonetheless, we can't even perceive the gaps of going in it when we're asleep, much less these little, very hard to perceive gaps.
So we blink back and forth.
This is just that, blinking back and forth.
As you live longer and approach death, would you perhaps blink longer in the other place?
It's quite possible.
And that maybe could be what senility is?
Who knows? These are things that, yes, indeed, and these are the things that deserve to be investigated, but taking a different overview because of that. Some of the other things, incidentally, that we've gotten into, and I have fun with it because in running through the stats on these several thousand people who have been through the Gateway program, is the universal question why we are here. What are we doing here? And one of the ones that I enjoy very much playing with is the fact that there are not just one reason why we are here. There are a number of different reasons why we are, and each have perhaps a fundamental reason, say, to experience. But there's all these other reasons, and these, after you run a profile through that many people, you begin to perceive these differences, and they are utterly fascinating. For example, there's enough data in our files at the moment to support the theory that a certain significant percentage of people we call human have never been humans before. They've never been in a human body.
That's a trippy thought.
Never.
What percentage? Do you have any, can you give an approximate?
It's around 8%, somewhere a little over 8%. Have never been a human being before. As far as we can determine by all the methods we know and others, we've come to that conclusion because they have a certain characteristic. And then we get, in exploring that characteristic, we say, well, how did they come to be humans then?
What were they before?
And what were they before? That gets this. And some of them have, and that goes back to why I come here. Some evidently have never been in any physical form before, but have heard about the experience of being human and are just plain curious.
God, dude, this is so fascinating. I'm sorry I keep stopping this, but nobody's explored consciousness more than, I don't know for a fact, but I feel like Robert Monroe and Thomas Campbell and, William Buellman and these guys have explored consciousness quite a bit more than the average person. And she's asking him some pretty important questions about when he was talking about the waveforms and reality. And he just flat out answered her, like, who knows? So you take a guy that's been exploring consciousness that much and still, we go around listening to people like they have the answers to everything spiritual and all this other stuff. And this cat's like the OG void walker, and he's still saying, who knows, to small questions as many times as he's been out of body.
Come to find out what it's like to be human. And having come for that reason, there are others who have never been in a human body or a physical body before, and they have an idea, a theory, and they like to test the theory, and the only way they can test the theory is to come be in a human body. So pop, they come into it. Imagine their disappointment.
And somebody who keeps recycling then becomes addicted?
Now you've jumped my word, because that's exactly what it is. That's the whole thing on the whole reincarnation thing that gets so fascinating. The other part of the word, the question of why do this more than once? And it's because as we sit here right now, we can look and say, well, this lifetime I'm not going to get a chance to do that, so I need to come back and do that. I don't know if I'd want to be a female, but there are certainly things in this lifetime that I have started, and I'd like to spend a whole lifetime doing. The best illustration I can give you in my own case is that if I am addicted, I'd like to come back and work with music, and work with music in physical matter, time, space, and translate what I have perceived into time, space. Maybe I'll get lazy and say, well, the heck with it, I'll just play with it where it is instead of trying to reduce it to physical matter. But the addiction concept of being in a human body, that physical matter and its intense experience, and there's a lot that seems to support this, that being in a physical body is an intense concentration of forms of energy, and they're only available in a physical body. Now, we've had other things that is kind of unique, the human body, because being in a crocodile body on another energy system doesn't give you certain tool-making privileges that you do when you have a physical body. And it is these types of things that are utterly, utterly fascinating when it comes to running these overall stats, why we are here, what it is, and why be in a physical body. And then there are the old hands who've recycled 10, 15, 100 times, who knows, and they're pretty easy to spot because they have a certain savvy, a certain casualness about events that doesn't disturb them, like they don't get nearly as frantic about some things. And you can spot them even as little babies. You can, I know of 2 or 3 that I've seen grow up from babyhood, and they have this single-pointedness that bewilders their parents totally. And the parents really can't do anything with them, but they don't have to do anything with them because they already know. They know right where they're going, and the parents just sort of feed them and clothe them, and they go through school and they get their schooling or whatever they need in schooling, and they go on. They never, because they know where they're going. And I've seen 2 of those grow up into maturity, and it's an astounding thing. They did know where they were going, and they did it. And they're old hands. They came here to do this. And
do those persons then have different attitudes about death? Are they more accepting about?
I don't think they even they don't even give death a thought. They don't even think about death. That's over here, and that'll happen when they're through doing what they have to do. Yeah. But this is one of the most fascinating things that has come out of this overlay profile stuff that we've done with these people who've been in the program. And the interesting part is that you can then begin, after playing with that profile, begin to spot people in their various motivations for being, and some who also, I might add, are desperately trapped in time and space and would do anything short of the morality structure with which they've been imbued. They would not do those things, but they do about anything else to get permanently out of this scene. And some of them then possibly in desperation either take a long suicide route or a short suicide route. Mm-hmm. And there is much of a difference.
Why are we so specialized or localized as an awareness? Why did we?
So remember what I was saying before the show started about death? Like getting to that level consciously as a being, not only to where you reincarnate, to where you don't forget who you are possibly, but the fear of death and the unknown doesn't become a fear anymore. It becomes an understanding of exploration and adventure. Imagine the possibilities if we could all just exhale that and let that go. You know, I believe this society will get there eventually. Maybe we still have thousands and thousands of years, but eventually we'll all get to this place. Hopefully here.
Choose to be this way.
Why are we specialized? I think it's principally by choice. Again, the life pattern that you selected has a series of opportunities. And in those series of opportunities, they are predicted opportunities. But certain situations or certain events may not let you exploit that given opportunity that you thought you would have. And this, I think, is where we have turnaround problems in the expectation in that given life. I think that's quite prominent.
No end to probabilities, whichever one you do.
That's right. But so life, you entered this particular life with a set series of opportunities that you could perceive on a probability base. The fact that they didn't turn out that way may not have been, quote, your fault or the fault of anything else except an intense system of variables.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be kind of...
no matter what the probability is, it's all experience anyhow.
That's right. You have to get that overview. That's the other part. Overview, I think, is a key to this this whole question of research effort and the results of it. And overview is what I think we try to help people gain. And that overview has to deal with what time-space is, what it is, and not only why you're here, but what it is. Because if you obtain that, then your participation here will be much different. It'll be much more profound to you to understand it. And one of our favorite phrases developed is that time-space is local traffic, and Earth living is local traffic. And so therefore we turn around and say to the individual, well, think of that and all the messy local traffic things which are local enculturation, local superstitions, local illusions, local misconceptions, and that's all local traffic. And this is local traffic. The Earth is a backwash in the backwash of the backwash of time-space.
Holy shit, bro. Like, I feel like I should, I mean, I don't smoke weed, but right now, like I do sometimes. Right now, I feel like I should be inhaling some really good, like, mind-stimulating weed to comprehend what he's saying. But in his book, he talks about M-band traffic noise, right? So when he goes out of body and leaves the Earth, there's this M-band traffic noise. That noise is made up of all of us. Like, imagine this place where everybody's dreams and thoughts and all this stuff exist, but also our beliefs, our superstitions, everything that we hold to be true, all our folklores, just like egregores, everything. It's just this jumbled up traffic, and the closer you get to Earth, the more intense it is. But this is why I listen to this guy's books. Like, I learn something new every year. I listen to these books. We gotta, I just want to go retire at the Monroe Institute, right? Any philanthropists listening, I swear I'll report everything. Just send me there. Be nicer if it was on a beach, but whatever, you know?
So if you think of that, and then think of what we call interstate, which is above all of that without any of the local traffic, and where you can go at 55 miles an hour and faster if nobody's looking, and how much different that is, and the minimal problems one encounters because the flow, you're part of a flow in one direction or the other. So that's what we like to play with. And it's very, very important to begin to get that overview, that different state. And other thing, I keep thinking of things that I should say. One of the things that is with working with all participants, volunteers, and anything else, is that we have a fundamental rule, and that is that you must verify for yourself. Whatever I say, for example, is a product of my own interpretation and the interpretation of the results that we have, the results that we have achieved. So there are filtration processes that work at even at what I speak and convey to you. So therefore, we have a firm rule. Whatever I may say, whatever comes out of the Institute, whatever you get in life, in information, you have the methods, and we attempt to provide the tools with those methods to determine the reality of that. And it's up to you to verify it in your own, not take anything as valid until you know it yourself. So what I say...
Amen to that.
You can say it's interesting, and you can say, well, I believe you, but to know is something else. This is your own job.
Have you worked with any terminal cases recently?
Have we worked with any terminal cases recently? Unfortunately, no. And the reason has been principally that most terminal cases need to be working in our program, as it were, through the physician. And physicians generally don't like to have that kind of responsibility. And in a way, you can't blame them because it is an unknown factor as far as they're concerned. However, we did have an interesting opportunity, and it was during one of the Gateway programs some months back that, and I say interesting advisedly, but here was the event. We had one program, and this woman was due to attend it, and by something that we didn't understand, in getting on or off the plane, she broke her leg. And this was up in Washington, D.C. airport that they discovered this, and so that she was taken to a hospital in Arlington with a broken leg. And she stayed there for some 6 or 7 weeks, and until she could attend the next Gateway program. And then she, in turn, arrived on the scene on crutches at this following program, and a very warm and pleasant woman. I would say she was in her 50s. And as she got into the program, we put her where she didn't have to walk up and down stairs on her crutches. And as a result, she came in on a Saturday, and by Tuesday, thereabouts, we had learned that she was indeed a terminal case, that she had some form of cancer, and she had been determined to attend our Gateway program, and as a result that's why she had stayed in the hospital instead of attempting to return to her home in the Southwest in between programs. Anyway, on about Wednesday of the program, she notified our instructor that she had to go to the hospital because of the fact that she needed a blood transfusion. And so we hustled her into the University of Virginia Hospital and installed her there, quite concerned. And that was on a Wednesday. And on a Thursday, I got in to see her. And she was in intensive care. And as a result, she was on oxygen. And she was breathing in this very deep, not quite a panting breath, but it was almost that. And in that particular mode, she was, if you didn't try to call her name or anything, she just lay there and she was dropping out and away. So I called to her, and she immediately responded, and we had a very pleasant conversation. And she did not appear to be in very deep pain, but the tape recorder or tape player that we had left with her was not in use because the nurses didn't know how to operate it. And she asked, would I please get it set for her? And what we had given her was a special set of tapes to use in the hospital, and in intensive care, anything they can do to help, in this case anyway, they were glad to let her have it. So it seems that it was very simple to push one button and get the tape recorder going, and so I put the headphones on her and started to play the tape. And she looked up and thanked me very graciously, with a great sense of meaning in her eyes. And
wow.
At the moment the tape started, she began to breathe very easily and steadily, and just as if she were going to sleep. So there was no point to my sitting there much longer and holding her hand, so I gently disengaged myself, and then in turn went on.
Does it seem like when because in the beginning of the show we talked about death and transition, does it seem like it doesn't affect him, not because he's emotionless, right, but because he's dealt with conscious exploration and conscious travel on such a level? I mean, even Robert Monroe states that he doesn't know all these things as a fact, right? If you really listen to his books and all his interviews and stuff. But you can tell intuitively in his heart that death and transition doesn't affect him in the way that it does us. It's not such I mean, I remember watching my grandmother die, just like it was such an emotional thing because it's unknown and they're going away like in our mind, like forever. And we don't know what's going to happen. We're going to miss them. And all these other things are going through our heads, but he was dealing with it on a level. It's almost like, even as I'm stating, as a scientific explorer of consciousness, you can tell intuitively, like, he kind of knows everything's okay. We're going to be all right, you know, based on all of his encounters, you know.
I guess it was about 5 o'clock the next afternoon. The hospital called me to state that this woman, I'll call her Jane, had died just a few minutes before. I felt mixed things, of course, but certainly a little bit of sadness, and also not knowing truly how much pain she'd been in. I didn't, in turn, feel anything other than this is what was scheduled to happen. In any event, we had an exercise session about to start. So, and the group here were very much aware of course, that this woman was in the hospital, but they were not aware, of course, that she died. So I sent them into Focus 12 with a very simple instruction. I said, just go and perceive what you do and what is there for you at this time. Interestingly enough, fully half of them after the session in debriefing, I reported all these different statements about this woman, Jane. One of them, for example, that she met Jane, and Jane was on the bank of a stream about to cross this bridge, and our participant tried to cross the bridge with her, and Jane said, no, you have to stay on this side because you're not ready to cross the bridge yet, but I am. And she went on. And another one reported, another of our participants reported in and said that he had met Jane, and that Jane had thrown her crutches up in the air and was, with this bright, joyous smile on her face, was saying, I'm free, I'm free. And there were things like that. And as a result, in looking at it from that point of view, it was quite natural that that night I went to check out on Jane myself. And in checking out with her, I did finally get in touch with her, I'll put it that way. And I found out why she had gone to the hospital, which I thought was a very touching thing. Her reason for going to the hospital was not for a blood transfusion. It's simply that she knew she was going to die, and she didn't want to embarrass us by dying here at the Institute. And that was a very warm thing, and to have that type of consideration, because we have never had that happen. I suppose it will someday with a terminal case here, but we would like to be set up for it before it happens. So that's sort of the story of Jane and our recent terminal case. And there you have it, one report from one transducer, as it were. And much like all the others, it poses more questions than it answers. Perhaps she should write that other book. Well, this is Robert Monroe saying, I'll see you around, I hope.
Perhaps I should write that other book. So he probably did this interview after this interview.
My name is Martin Warren. I act as a monitor for many of the Explorer sessions, now taking...
Anyways, he probably did this interview after he just did Journeys Out of the Body, like the first book. And I wish there was a better, like, I wish there was a better way to sell this. Like, not just to the people that listen to these shows or the people that, obviously, to you guys, of course, Like, if you haven't listened to Journeys Out of the Body, please, like, do so. But this isn't a BS. It isn't science fiction. I love science fiction, but this isn't science fiction. It's definitely fringe, but it's real. And that in itself should mean a lot. Like, I saw what you guys were saying in the chat room talking about, did they take it underground, or the research back underground? I mean, think about it. Everybody that's been to the Monroe Institute that I've had on this show, even the older shows, have talked about how it changed everything. Let me try to think of the biggest one. Whitley Strieber. Yeah, that's probably the biggest one. Fascinating guy. Wrote Communion. One of the biggest encounter experiences that we all know about. Hopefully most of us know about it. If you haven't, you should look into it. It's fascinating. When I had Whitley Strieber on the show, just kind of offhandedly mentioned that he went to the Monroe Institute. And when he did, after he had the experiences that he went through, it changed his whole outlook on what happened to him with the aliens and everything. And you guys remember, if you listen to old school Art Bell, how crazy like that story was when everybody was talking about it. It was kind of a scary alien abduction type story, right? But everybody was talking about it. But people would ask. They did ask him even back then. But you guys were asleep. Like, why does this stuff always happen in this weird, like, hypnagogic state? These abduction experiences. No one's taken away from the experience. But anyways, there are reports from other people and books that I still haven't read that some of the listeners have sent me, where people have written just all kinds of things about their experience at the Monroe Institute. So, to what y'all are saying in the chat, once you get into this type and this level of conscious exploration, like, you and I have to live in the world. So to do this would be like a getaway for us. But once you get to this level of conscious exploration and it's funded, or you can actually live and do it, I don't even think you're going to take too much time. I know I wouldn't. I'm just saying, maybe one show a week, maybe, like, too much time explaining things that are hard to explain. When Robert Monroe talks about life as waveforms, I'm going to go back and listen to that again tonight before I go to sleep, but that makes more sense than anything I've ever heard, whether it's the out-of-body experience, the psychedelic experience, everything that we've experienced with colors and symbols and all the contacts and entity contacts that we make when we have experiences. And this was something that he explained to this woman, late 70s, early 80s. I can only imagine what some people actually know about conscious exploration at this point that they're not telling us. But again, I'll say this before I want to play this other. I don't know if we got time to get all the way into it, but it's more about the explorers themselves. But I still think Thomas Campbell is putting out the most information that's as close to accurate as what Monroe and them were doing today, right? And I told Cosmic, I think earlier today, to check out Thomas Campbell too. So, I mean, all of his work. Let's see what this has to say real quick, because we're starting to run out of time here.
In place at the laboratory of the Monroe Institute of Applied Sciences. Many who attend the Gateway Voyage program here at the Institute, or those who have listened to our published explorer tapes, want to know how someone became an explorer, or how they can become an explorer. For most people, it requires more than a desire to explore. It often takes months and sometimes even years of practice before an individual can comfortably and consistently achieve the expanded states of consciousness that are necessary for fruitful explorer work in our lab. The following tape excerpts are the results of one person's dedication and commitment to her intent. They help to demonstrate the process of becoming one of our explorers. HRL first attended a gateway voyage here in Virginia in November of 1984. She was able to spend some extra time here after her gateway and asked for the opportunity to be the subject in a lab session. She showed promise, and we asked her to go home and practice. In her case, she used a close friend to help monitor her practice sessions at home. She was able to return for another lab session in late January of 1985, and a few minutes into the session, a new voice began to speak. And she's moving on through 19 and 20 and into 21.
Yes, we are now. We are now into 21, and we are going forward, and we are now in a perception field, and we can go forward.
Yes, very good. So we're here.
This is so crazy, man.
This new voice continued off and on in a strained, often hard-to-understand manner, but it was clearly attempting to open a channel of communication.
We have to establish a better pattern, I believe. Grace us with time.
Very good. Very good. We will simply wait for the pattern
it's a
to be
little
worked
eerie,
out.
right? A little bit, yeah. Just hearing her like try to talk while she's going through these consciousness levels or OBE states or whatever.
Finally, at the end of the session, a clear message was delivered.
I know that this is a great adjustment for Helen today, and we have been able to achieve this level. However, she is not accustomed to this
she's possessed
level, and therefore it has required much concentration on her part, and she needs further to practice in the level of this consciousness. Do you understand?
Yes, I think you're recommending that she practice.
All right, so I'm going to say something that's a little. Hold on. Let me pause this.
This is a most unusual state, and she.
So I'm going to say something that's going to freak people out. You don't have to do this, but these explorers would get to a certain level where they, I mean, think about if you're exploring and you're getting out of body all the time around here, and then you're getting out of body in different states or dimensions or waveforms, whatever that he was talking about earlier. And eventually you want to start getting the answers to things. Now, you're not going to get answers by trying to interpret color and symbol and all this stuff, But when you make contact with entities and start asking them questions, like, you'll get answers. So Thomas Campbell was one of those people that would go back and forth, like talking to entities, then coming back and answering questions. Robert Monroe, we heard it before, right? Robert Monroe would ask him what to say. He'd go back out and ask again. 9 times out of 10, a lot of these women just have figured out, not so much the guys, but the women have figured out how to like open themselves up and let these beings speak through them, you know, which I think maybe we can get into more like tomorrow night because we're running out of time. But you don't hear too many dudes doing this, but a lot of these explore women do this stuff. And I think this thing is what freaks people out. It's like, oh, you're letting someone possess you. But I mean, we don't really get, as freaky as it sounds, we don't really get a lot of feedback on what happens to these people after this. Like, did they die? Did they get hit by a car? Like, is it really that bad that they open themselves up? I don't know. We'll play this for a few minutes just to play with it and roll before we roll out of here.
She is not accustomed to this level. However, she is quite capable and must practice daily. And this is something that she should do every day. And she has knowledge of this level. She just needs to practice. She does not always do this. And this is recommended for her. This must be done on a daily basis. Do you understand? We can achieve much with her assistance. She is capable and must have this discipline, and it is recommended that she do this daily, every day. You must instruct her. She is not accustomed to achieving this level, but now I believe she has knowledge of this and must proceed because we have much to tell you. I know that it is going to take some discipline on her part, but she is willing to dedicate and must receive confirmation of this. Do you understand me?
Yes, I understand you quite well, and we will certainly give her that encouragement and instruction and so whatever support we can provide for her.
Very well.
And we would look forward then to future contacts with you when she has developed greater ease with and comfort with achieving this condition.
Well, on that note, I think I'll let you guys go tonight. All right. But please, if you can, please help us get the radio station back online by going to fringe.fm and supporting any amount. All of it helps. Okay. Any amount. It doesn't matter what it is. No one's going to tell on you if it's small, big. It doesn't matter. All of it helps. But, here, let me do this for some of you, because I know some of you guys are like, no, I want to hear more tonight or whatever. Here is the link. I'm going to drop this in the, is this going to work? Yeah. If I drop this in the chat there. Pretty eerie stuff. Also, if you get into the Gateway program and you listen to, or you actually start doing some of the Gateway Voyage stuff or the Gateway program, they'll do this other eerie thing where it's called, what is it called? Resonance breathing. And everybody will start kind of vibrating their own resonance as they breathe out. And it sounds kind of eerie, but it actually helps you get out of body. It's helped me quite a bit. Yeah, I'm with you. They probably were going to answer some more questions. I'm going to listen to this myself. a little more tonight. But thank you for your support, Domek. I appreciate that, brother. And anybody else that wants to support the station, please do so. We'll be back tomorrow night. I'll see if I can sift through some more Explorer stuff that I find personally interesting. I'm just trying to imagine what it would be like as Robert Monroe, as that mad scientist sitting next to all these people as they go out of body and what they report back to him versus his own experiences. But love you guys, each and every one of you. Sweet dreams. Night night. Sweet dreams.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.